Well, good morning, and thank you so much for those of you joining us on our digital platforms. We know it's been a very chilly start to the day. I'm Hannah Burbank, joined alongside meteorologist Chandler Jordan. Chandler, we got kind of a lot to talk about, and especially we do want to touch on, obviously, this weekend's chance of snow, a very evolving forecast. So where do we begin with that?
Yeah, and so I do want to preface everything by saying that this is a highly evolving forecast. There's a lot of uncertainty because a lot of the ingredients that we need to come together haven't even developed yet. And so until we are able to see these ingredients begin to develop on Thursday and Friday, there are going to be evolvements, there are going to be changes, and there are certainly going to be different scenarios as to when these ingredients come together. And winter weather in South Carolina is very, very volatile. All it takes is one little change and it has a drastic outcome as to what actually happens.
And so throughout this, please ask us any questions and we'll do our best to answer them live while we're going. But I know you have kind of the different scenarios with your graphic right here showing ice, snow, and then dry, which is kind of what we're hoping for. So kind of break down each scenario, if you will.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of different uncertainties that come into play in the sense that we have to watch how different weather systems will interact with one another to in turn give us an opportunity to maybe be dry or to maybe have rain or to maybe have snowfall. And so one of the key ingredients that we're going to keep an eye out for later this week is that there's going to be an area of low pressure that'll develop near the Gulf and the shores of Florida. And as it moves towards the East Coast and the Atlantic, depending upon its path will determine the better chance of the type of precipitation that we have. And so if this low were to form and move closer to the coastline of the Carolinas, that would give us a little bit of a better chance to maybe have not only a liquid rain, but similar to what we had this past weekend, there could also be parts that feature a freezing rain that would lead to wet accumulations of rainfall, but also that could lead to accumulations of ice. Now, there are scenarios, and we've seen it in some of our data runs that happened yesterday and throughout the earlier parts of the weekend, that if this low were to develop and move well offshore, a lot of us stay dry this weekend. And so there's certainly a answer in our forecast that could keep a lot of us dry, and there is also a happy medium. If this low were to stay offshore, but just enough offshore that it's wrapping in colder air from our north, that would be our best chance at supporting snowfall in South Carolina. And so we love to use this graphic to kind of refer to the steps of winter weather forecasting in South Carolina. We're still trend watching. You know, over the weekend, we were seeing that it was possible, but of course we had bigger fish to fry talking about a winter storm. But, you know, some of us were looking ahead to the next possibility. And so we've been trend watching, and we will still continue to trend watch today, as well as all day Wednesday. And again, it's not going to be until Thursday and Friday that these ingredients will start to come together for us to get a better idea as far as the type of precipitation. We'll start to get a better idea of the timing as well by Thursday and Friday. And you won't see any type of snowfall, ice total, rainfall map from us at least until Friday and into this weekend, because that's where with the most confidence we can talk about these finer details. And there's no need in talking about the finer details if there's still so much uncertainty as to how things will come together and what that in turn will give us as these ingredients come together.
Right. So obviously, I mean, a lot closer to this weekend. We are still only Tuesday, but y'all were talking about it a little earlier about there has been some model agreement, which is why we kind of have, I believe, is it a 40% right now chance? Talk about that.
Yeah, and so there have been pieces of data that have shown signals for us to be able to support wintry weather in South Carolina. And again, that's going to be dependent upon some of these ingredients coming together. And so it is a very volatile forecast because we are still several days away, and we need each and every one of these to all come together and work together to even give us a chance to have any type of wintry weather in South Carolina. We kind of, you know, looking back at this time last week, And then this time the week before last, it is now a third week in a row where we're looking ahead to the following weekend, and we haven't even gotten through the current weekend as to what we are expecting or what we're keeping an eye out for. And so if you remember this time last week when we were looking ahead to this past Saturday and Sunday, it looks like for a lot of the Carolinas, it was a major winter storm, and there were a lot of evolvements, a lot of changes and fluctuations in the forecast, and we did the best we could to communicate those as we went throughout the week. We did have some ice accumulations. We did have some snowflakes at time, but luckily we didn't get extremely cold, or at least cold enough to support a damaging storm. And we'll take that any day of the week.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it just goes to show how quickly the forecast can change and how ever evolving, like you've been saying, it really is out there. So just tracking it step by step, but literally within hours, it can change, and you guys are looking at new data.
And, you know, it can come down to something as simple as a tenth of a degree. You know, the freezing mark is 32, 32.1. You're going to have liquid. 31.9, you're going to have, you know, frozen precipitation. And so there's changes that come down to such a fine detail. And it's, you know, that's just how forecasting goes, especially in the South for any type of wintry weather. Any finer detail down to a tenth of a degree makes all of the difference in whether you have snowfall, whether you have freezing rain or a liquid rain, or in this case, you know, it could be something as simple as 50 miles southward for our low as it moves into the ocean. And a lot of us could stay dry this weekend.
Yeah, which, you know, I would not be opposed to.
Me neither.
We obviously saw some ice accumulation this past weekend. So talking a little bit about the difference between ice and snow, maybe the hazards on the road, or just kind of what that would look like. Snow, not as slippery, but still offers a little bit of hazard there. Just kind of explain the difference.
Yeah, and you know, when we were kind of talking about our forecast for this past weekend, we were rooting for sleet. And the reason why sleet is, you know, pellets, and these pellets can't grip to power lines, trees, you know, they bounce off of things and then they collect on the ground. And so when it comes to any type of winter weather, you know, you're going to pull for sleet pellets or maybe even snowfall over ice, because while there are still impacts, while the roads are still hazardous, while there are still ways that you could lose power or trees could be, you know, damaged because of it, not nearly as much of an impact as the ice. And, you know, we've seen across some of the country around, you know, Tennessee, farther up north as well, just how dangerous ice can be when it accumulates. And so looking ahead, you know, if we were to have wintry weather this weekend, you know, it's an if still, if we were to have wintry weather this weekend, we'll pull for sleet because it doesn't collect as well on power lines, on trees. You know, it does on the roads. It takes time, but, you know, you'd rather deal with that than ice in any type of situation.
100%. And thankfully today we've really just been seeing cold temperatures, at least no precipitation with that. And so again, we're only on Tuesday of the week, and I know we're kind of talking about forecasts for later on in this weekend, but right now, I mean, our satellite radar, Chandler, was looking pretty good.
Yeah, you know, we've got a clear sky, and that's why we got so cold throughout the night and into this morning. The National Weather Service, they have a product called a cold weather advisory. These are new as of last year and into this year, and the reason why they've issued these is because they want to put an emphasis on temperatures that are well below the cold that we are used to. Yes, it gets cold in South Carolina. We all know that, but, you know, quite frankly, waking up on a morning with temperatures in the teens, when you factor in the breeze this morning, some of us feeling as cold as the single digits. We'll get over to the temperature map. You know, that's really cold. That's something that doesn't really happen too often in South Carolina, especially for us when we're so used to being able to at least have warm or hot weather, especially for our springs and summers. But 15 right now in Saluda, just before 9 o'clock this morning, still around 18 in Lexington, 18 in St. Matthews. As I just showed, you know, the sun is up now, and so this is the process of the morning where temperatures are starting to climb, but still there's going to be a very cold chill that lingers for a couple more hours. And then luckily we've got a lot of sunlight to work with today, so that will help us warm up. Your temperature this afternoon is 44 degrees. It'll be cold, but the afternoon's not going to be too bad for us with the proper clothing. And so again, these cold weather advisories are issued because these are abnormally cold temperatures compared to what we would typically have on a winter-like morning. And so that's why this product was issued. And, you know, all the more of a reason, just bundle up and try to stay warm today.
Yeah, especially, you know, it is nice to know that going out on your morning commutes and after work, road conditions should look pretty good. Obviously very cold. So if you are heading out, maybe go a few minutes early to get your car ready because it is a chilly one out there. And this cold weather advisory is until 10 this morning.
Yeah, so we have about another hour. Once we get past 10 this morning, temperatures will start to climb to and above the freezing mark. The advisory will come to a close. Our alert day for this morning will expire, and that's because temperatures will be above freezing. And then from there, seasonably cold this week, but, it's winter. So, you just got to bundle up, try and stay warm, and, just make sure you have your layers, especially spending time outside in the mornings because that's when we're at our coldest.
And real quick, an update on First Alert Weather Day is what we're seeing. Which ones do we have in effect at this time? So
we have this morning, which will go into, it'll expire at 10 this morning, and then we're keeping an eye out on our weekend forecast. So we'll go back to our scenarios. This is what we're going to watch closely throughout this weekend. Again, the evolvement of the forecast, a lot of ingredients coming into play of volatile, a little bit of a change makes all the difference in what we could have this weekend. And again, I like to use this graphic because, we don't like to jump ahead of ourselves. Right. We are trend watching. So just because our icon on our 10-day forecast says snow, that doesn't mean we are calling for snow. It's more so that's what we are watching for is a worst case scenario, so to speak.
And I think you guys do a really good job, and especially if you have our WIS First Alert Weather app, y'all are the ones putting in the information, our First Alert Weather team. It's very localized, very specific, where you made this point earlier, if you pull it up on your phone, whether it's an Apple, Android, very general. So you're seeing a very different forecast there, and it's important to really, go with your local. You guys are tracking the science and data, and definitely letting us know that it is very ever-changing. So that is something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I opened the Apple Weather app just a little while ago, about an hour ago, has 3 to 6 inches of snow and almost an inch of ice in South Carolina and around Columbia. And so that is, that not even close to being like a forecast that people should take weight to, because you could probably open this thing this time tomorrow and it's going to be entirely different than what you saw the day before. And just to put, context to it, 2 days before our event that we had this past weekend, it was calling for, inch and a half of ice, and Columbia, a few inches of snow as well. And so that's why, downloading our app, you're able to get an update that is going to be personalized, and we do the best that we can, give you all the updates that we have. And, all of us, everyone has the same access to this information. And so it's just a matter of how we use it and how we are able to communicate the forecast. And so, that's why with, something as volatile as winter weather, just got to be extra careful. And, wherever you're getting your trusted forecast from, just know that these situations change. We get model runs in the long range form since we're still several days away. We get runs that are every 6 hours, and every 6 hours, what we get closer to lunchtime today probably going to be way different than what we had for this morning, and it'll be different again for the afternoon, and then it'll be different again for the evening. And that's just how forecasting goes in such a long range form, not only for winter weather, just weather in general. Things change, and so that's why we have to watch the trends these next few days and see if the same trends are able to stick. If the same trends are staying with us for a couple more days, then that's where we can heighten our awareness to keeping an eye out for snow or maybe ice, or if the trend pivots that way, dry weather.
All right. Selfishly, I am hoping for the dry weather.
Me too. I'm not a fan of winter weather. I mean, it's cool and all. One good snow a year, one good winter event's fine, but I don't know. It gets old. I live in South Carolina for a reason. We're famously hot, and I like hot days, and so it's just I don't know. We'll get there.
We're getting the cold stint right now, but we appreciate you guys and obviously your forecasting, and we will continue to provide updates, and of course that being on air, but then also on our digital platform. That's why we want to do kind of these more in-depth sit-downs to explain a little bit more behind the forecast and what we're tracking. You can always stay up to date by downloading our WIS News app, our First Alert Weather app, and of course, if you scan that QR code, it'll take you directly to those platforms. And also, join us online, WISTV.com. But thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us. And, it's nice to be able to sit down and do the best we can to explain what we're looking at in our process of thinking. And again, this is a volatile forecast. Things will change, and, we'll do our best the next several days to give you all the updates as we get the updates.
Absolutely. All right. Oh, we got a question before we go. Win on Friday would it start?
So Gloria, we're going to refer to this graphic for the specific timing. Way too early to have any type of timing in our forecast because, again, we could see our low pressure system develop sooner, and that would mean early on Friday, or it could be a little delayed in its development, and it could be late Friday and into Saturday. And so still way too early to tell any type of specific timing or specific details related to timing. Again, we're in the trend watching stage of our forecasting for winter weather in South Carolina right now. Our main concern is we're just keeping an eye out if it's looking more or if it's looking less likely. So that's a good question that we'll be able to answer better for you once we get into Thursday and Friday. But right now, something I tell you at this moment could be entirely different by this evening when Adam's doing this. And so, I can't tell you with exact certainty the exact hour right now. We're still several days out, but certainly the general time frame for this would be Friday night and into Saturday. But again, that is subject to change depending upon how these ingredients come together and move towards us depending on their speed.
Something we all will continue to track. And of course, coming up on our news at midday today, we'll have our weather team here who will give us another update and just kind of see how things are going along, not just for this weekend, but today and the conditions, because it is still a cold day that we have in store for us, unless we have sunshine though.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of life to live until we get into this weekend. And so I don't think we should necessarily get so wrapped up in something that's several days away. I don't know, me personally, it's good to look ahead, especially when it's a potentially impactful event, but we've still got the rest of our Tuesday, our Wednesday, our Thursday, a lot of life to live, a lot of life to enjoy. And so I hope everyone's able to enjoy staying warm and know that behind the scenes, on the air, we're doing the best our can to give you each and every update as we get them. But also, don't let this consume your life. Enjoy yourself. Stay warm. Stay inside if you hate the cold, and just do the best you can to manage.
Bundle up and enjoy the sunshine. But thank you, Chandler, and thank you all for joining us. Any more questions, we'll happily answer throughout the day as we get them. But thanks for joining us.